Hi, welcome. This is our podcast, Melvin. I'm Tori, that's Nicole, and our guest star, my sister, Sydney.
Hey.
Today we usually talk about mysterious and strange things, and Nicole is going to talk about a little something, and we're going to react to it. This is going to be fun. You get two audience that have no idea. I have little idea of what it is.
Yeah, it was one of those things I couldn't help but be like, Tori, listen.
I love it. I can't wait.
I don't know anything.
Yep.
Yay,
She's completely in the blind.
All right, so today we're going to talk about a gentleman known as Robert Liston. He was a surgeon in the 1800s. So back then, surgery was essentially just cutting off limbs and trying not to kill someone while you were cutting off limbs.
Sounds like my kind of surgery.
Sounds like the only kind I could possibly do.
So Robert Liston, I will say, when I first looked him up, I found pictures of him, and he has like such thick sideburns. Like they rival Anthony from Bridgerton. Like, you know how in the first season Anthony had like the big sideburns. Like his are bigger. His sideburns are huge.
Are they like ones which is like almost like a beard, but the middle section's gone?
Yeah, so it's like it would go in between the ears and it would stop like right here.
How is that attractive?
I don't know. I'm glad they got rid of it on Anthony though in the second season because I was like, what is happening?
What's that growth growing on the side of his face?
It was not flattering. It's not flattering. But he had huge sideburns. But he was born on October 28th in 1794 in, I don't know how to say this, and I should have looked it up, but as we've learned, I don't look things up when I should. Ecclesmacan, West Lothian, Scotland. So he was Scottish.
Oh man, that explains so much.
He attended.
You're about to find out.
I was like, that he cuts off limbs? Wait, we're Scottish. Wait a minute.
We have some Scottish. We're mainly Irish and German.
Irish.
Anyways, back to the story.
But he attended Edinburgh Medical School when he was 14, which is not completely unheard of in the 1800s. You usually started apprenticeships at age 14.
That just shows
you
how
13 or something.
Dumb we've gotten over the years.
Well, no, if you think about it, we are teaching our kids in educational systems now, we prepare them for 50 million jobs that they could have. That's basically what the school system is now. It's preparing you for.
Oh, so this was just one.
Yeah.
Preparing them for one. Okay.
One thing, yeah.
So,
gotcha.
So if you want to be a candle maker or a merchant or something, you'd be an apprentice under that because that's the job you're preparing for.
You would first have a general education, which was basically just elementary school, and then from there, that's when you would start just.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but he attended when he was 14, and he became an assistant to Dr. John Barclay when he was 16. So cool. He seemed to be pretty advanced even at a young age. He even went on to teach at different schools, but he was known as a very stubborn guy.
Yeah.
So he would say his superior would be like, no, you need to do it this way, and he'd go, no, I want to do this, or I want to treat this patient, and then he'd get fired, and he'd move to the next school.
And this is why I say the Scottish makes sense. Scottish are known to be stubborn.
Mm-hmm. So back in his surgical days, the best surgeons were known to cut the fastest so that they would cause less bleeding, and so it would also be less pain. Because a lot of times when people died, it was because they were just under so much shock because they were literally having stuff cut off with no anesthesia.
Yeah.
Because this is before anesthesia was invented.
They are awake.
Which
noise.
I'm so glad I did not live in the time without anesthesia.
Oh my goodness. That'd be awful.
I'd rather than just shoot me.
This is why, they didn't have a lot of dentistry, whatever. I'm sure a lot of people probably were just no, I refuse.
Well, I remember there was a book that I read that was called At the Sign of the Sugared Plum. It was talking about Black Death. It's from the perspective of a girl who lived during the Black Death, and her sister at one point in the story gets a infected tooth, and it describes that back then they would just yank out your tooth without anesthesia. They couldn't do anything. But I think they give you a piece of mint or something so that you're not just tasting blood afterward. But other than that, it was kind of yank it out real quick and then go on with your day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could die from a tooth infection, which is just like baffling to me. Something so small could be the
'cause
cause of your.
They didn't realize it was caused by bacteria. This is before like they knew what bacteria even was.
Yeah.
Which is so weird. It's so cool how much we've like advanced in medicine in just like 200 years.
It's quite advanced now, for sure, along with technology. But
So,
anyhow,
he had
it's
a
no anesthesia.
I think it was a friend of his, but this guy's name's Richard Gordon. He wrote a lot about him in his like medical book. I don't know if it was a medical book or like a medical history book, but he talked about Liston a lot. And he described him as the fastest knife in the West End, and he could amputate a leg in 2.5 minutes.
Dude.
I think he was too proud of his work.
Oh, it gets better.
Yeah.
Oh, it gets
I mean,
better.
that's way better than sitting down waiting for your leg to be chopped off. For
I will say I'd
couple
rather
of,
get my
like,
leg amputated in 2 minutes than in 20.
Absolutely.
Although that's got
2 hours.
I can only imagine how long that felt though when you were having the surgery done.
Oh,
Yeah.
Like probably felt like
An eternity.
hours. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
That's crazy.
So Gordon described the scene of when he was doing surgeries. So back then, whenever they did surgeries, because he taught at schools, right? So not only was he performing surgeries, but he was also teaching others while he was performing the surgeries because he was known as one of the best. So Gordon described that whenever he was doing the surgeries, first of all, Liston was 6'2" and a really big buff dude. So that made his job a lot easier because back then it was just about cutting the fastest. So most of the time the surgeons had to be like pretty big dudes. So he had that to his advantage. And he operated in a bottle green coat because they didn't do any kind of like antibacterial or, they didn't really have like health practices on cross-contamination or anything like that. So they would just reuse knives and stuff because they didn't know that would spread things.
Right.
That's before we had any knowledge of that. And he also wore Wellington boots while he was operating. He would move super quickly, and before he would start his surgeries, he would shout, "Time me, gentlemen, time me." Because he was so proud of how fast he could amputate limbs. And then...
I need that on a shirt.
Time me,
Time
gentlemen.
me.
Time me.
Oh,
But in a Scottish accent.
Yes.
I can't do a Scottish accent. I'm not going to try.
Not even, yeah, no.
So in order to get, like, because they would basically cut open the leg with, like, a regular, like, surgical knife. It looked like a sharper butter knife when I looked at the pictures. But they would cut it with, like, a regular knife, and then they would have to put the knife aside and get a saw to get the bone, right? So he wanted to move so fast, and they didn't have, like, safe medical practices back then. He would just take the knife after he had cut the leg. Tori.
Motherfucker.
The biggest red X. The biggest red X.
Can it pick up on that in the mics?
Yeah,
Really?
it'll
Oh.
come up. Yeah, it's okay.
Did it turn off now?
That was your alarm, wasn't it?
It was my alarm.
It's okay. I still love you.
It's so dramatic. For what?
But he would take that knife, he would cut the soft part of the skin, and then you need to do it with a saw. So he would take the knife and he'd put it in his mouth, like the handle part. He'd put the handle part in his mouth and then saw the bone part because he was just trying to move super fast.
I mean, all right.
But it just sounds so like chaotic and like Sweeney Todd, like
I love it.
Gotta get. If he like stuck the blood portion, like the sharp end, in his mouth, that's when I would
I'm not
been
gonna
like,
lie, that's what first came into visual was
Yeah.
him just cleaning like the bloody knife with like his tongue,
like the
and
knife
then
and toss it
putting the
aside.
handle. Yeah, I don't know. I have a twisted brain.
Well, when
Anyways.
I thought, whenever she had made the comment of like, "Time me, gentlemen," I always thought like it's this really big like butcher's knife or something, and it would just go whacked out.
oh yeah, they didn't
I feel like
use one
that
of
would have
those.
been more
Unfortunately.
efficient. If
Yeah,
it was.
it was more like a fancy like butter knife almost, but the blade end was like diamond shaped almost, and it was super sharp.
Oh, I know
Yeah.
what you're talking about.
Yeah. But the best thing I can describe is a butter knife because that's what
Yeah.
it reminds me of. Because like the handles weren't like intricate or fancy; it was just surgical knife. Apparently, his stuff is in like museums. That's because he was
cool.
a very like prolific surgeon for his time.
Yeah, because if I needed an amputation, I would want him to do it because he does it the fastest.
So back then, hygiene practices were considered prude and unnecessary in a surgical setting because infection was just considered like part of the risk of the surgery. Like it was common for you to get gangrene after a surgery. Like his statistics, only 1 out of 10 patients of his would die on the table, whereas most surgeons, it'd be about 1/4 of them would die on the table from a surgery.
Well, another reason why I would want him over others.
But it was really common for you to get like gangrene and like different kinds of infections afterward because they didn't realize that small pathogens were responsible for infection that could spread like through different blood and stuff like that. They had no idea that was a thing.
Yikes. That's all I gotta say. Ugh.
I'm just speechless. Continue.
He was described both by Gordon and then his co-workers. He was described as being argumentative, abrasive, and abrupt, but he was extremely charitable to the poor and nice to the sick people. And he would often take patients that people said were a lost cause. Like doctors wouldn't agree to operate on them because they're like, well, you're going to die if I operate on you. And Liston was like, well, I want to try operating on them. Like, I don't really care if it's a lost cause. I want to try to operate on them if they want to have the operation.
You're trying to save a life, you know? I'm pretty sure that's what he was thinking in his mind.
Yeah, because it's, if you think about it, like if you have had like a lame leg for your entire life and it's affecting you and it's like maybe even infected, or back then I guess they would consider it like plagued by ghosts or something, because that's when they believed people were cursed and stuff. Like that was their medicine. You are haunted. Boom. Go to the church. And that was all they would do. Like if no one else wanted to cut off your leg, then you'd feel hopeless. So it's kind of like, might as well just chance, cutting it off and me losing my life than not being able to do anything and dying, suffering.
Just having a pointless life.
Yeah.
Not doing anything.
Yeah. So he would take those cases, but he was super unpopular with his fellow coworkers because he didn't want to listen to people at the Edinburgh Royal Infirmary.
Hey, but good for him, Stick it to the man.
I guess. But this is your coworkers too. Like you're not gonna listen to anything that they say.
Like some of the prolific people, he would call them out whenever they would do something. Like there was one doctor, he was Dr. Robert Knox. He kept a deceased woman's body in whiskey for about 3 months, basically for display purposes, because he was also working at that hospital. It wasn't like for the public, but it was like for if students wanted to come and see.
That's still wrong.
So and so Liston called him out and was like, I know that you're not just keeping this for like dissection and studying purposes. Like that's wrong.
Yeah.
So you know what? Tori. He should be calling his coworkers out on stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he should. If that's the case, 100%.
I feel like you need people like that in a workspace to some degree.
Yeah, to some degree, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If they're doing like wrong, like that's just awful.
If only I could call out people.
A moral line.
And not get fired.
I mean, technically he did, not from this place, but in other places he got fired for, not agreeing with his superiors about certain things.
He knew he was the best.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah.
I don't have an issue with surgeons whenever I find out that they're like stubborn or like they're like, no, I'm gonna do it this way, because in my opinion, if you're operating on something and you have like nurses and stuff helping you, which they didn't have nurses back then, but like thinking from a modern perspective, I'd rather have someone who's confident, even if they're cocky, like operating on me, than someone that's just like, maybe I'm not doing, I'm gonna double think this, and then they take longer. And
yeah, I would definitely want somebody that's
someone like that for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely want somebody that knows how they like to do things,
right,
and not be that for sure.
Because it's like, I don't have to be besties with my surgeon. I just want them to get their job done, and it's fine.
Yeah,
like don't botch my surgery, just and we're good.
Save my life or try to, and that's all I can ask.
But he was the first professional, Wow, I can't read my own handwriting. He was the first professor of clinical surgery at the University College Hospital in London in 1835. He also performed the first public operation using anesthesia, which was, I think it's pronounced ether, I think, in Europe, because someone else did it in America first, I believe. But he did that on the 21st of December in 1846, and he also invented see-through isinglass sticking plaster, which I think is for casts. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And then bulldog forceps, which I don't know what that is, but if you're a nurse or a doctor, then you know what that is. Yeah, they're called bulldog forceps.
I'm going to have to ask my husband what that is.
Yes.
Bulldog
Forceps.
forceps.
She has it in her notes, so
Okay.
she can send it.
That's true.
Just that should let you know.
Thank you for that little
Yeah,
tip.
you're welcome. That's why I'm here.
And he also invented a leg splint for stabilizing dislocations and fractures of the femur, which is really difficult.
Yeah.
Like
Well-
anything involving like the top of your leg or like pelvic area, it's so hard to stabilize that. Mm-hmm. So hard,
Look at him go.
right? He was a cool
guy.
dude,
Yeah.
but he was
Like him more and
believed. There is one thing that is kind of like oof about him though, because he cut so fast that he had one surgery that he royally botched. And I think this is the thing that I had to tell Tori about because it was just oof. But he was so this is also a rumor. It was in his friend's book. And he wrote it very dramatically because he's like, he wanted to embellish stories. So
I 100% would do the same thing.
yeah, some people are skeptical as to how many of the details actually happened, but I think it actually happened because it sounds right
I think
for how this guy operated.
If I was writing as my friend, I would definitely put in like all the details that happen and just like really empathize those details. So maybe not
Right.
as dramatic, but it happened.
But he is believed to have performed the only surgery known to have a 300% mortality rate, which means that his one surgery killed 3 people. So what happened?
Huh?
You look so intrigued.
I am.
So what happened was. What happened was he was amputating a guy's leg, and he accidentally, while he was amputating the guy's leg, cut off his assistant's fingers. And also, while he was brandishing the knife, I think he was like cutting it to like put it in his mouth or something, but he cut the coattails of someone else who was watching, and the patient later died of gangrene. The person whose fingers he accidentally amputated died of gangrene, and then the guy who he accidentally like cut in his lab coat got so freaked out by the fact that he either A, got stabbed or almost got stabbed, that he had a heart attack and died from shock.
Okay, I wanna. This is my question. Why was that dude standing so close?
This is a good question.
Like, so
Good questions indeed.
I'm sorry, but if there's a surgery going on,
And the
I'm not
guys-
gonna be there. I'm not gonna.
I'll be off to the side, and when you said, hand me this, I'll hand you that.
I'll hand you it from a distance. I'm not, I don't know. And then, why was the person's finger so close to the blade?
That's also what I'm thinking. Like, that sounds like his
That's-
fault.
It sounds like their fault.
That's
This guy,
what I'm imagining
innocent.
is he's like holding the leg because the person's awake, so
yeah.
they're freaking out. So you have to have someone that's holding him down.
Oh, okay.
So that's what I'm thinking
Oh,
is that
maybe
he was trying
that
to.
person like was really frantic and pushed their hand to where it then gets sawed off.
Yeah, and then
I love how we're finding ways to excuse the surgeon's fault. And it's the
No, it's
person
still-
holding the leg. He was
still
just too
his
close to the
fault.
blade. He was just too close to the blade.
Well, I'm trying to think, how did this even
It wasn't the
happen?
surgeon's fault.
Oh, I mean, he should have paid attention, but he was trying to get it done fast. Mm-hmm. So
And if
clearly
people-
he's not
and if-
paying attention.
Well, also, if people knew that he's known to wanting to get these surgeries done faster, I feel like they should take that into account.
It's the same with the Observer. I think the Observer might have just, because it's basically, it was either another professor watching and wanting to learn, or it was a student, but it was it was like a surgical observer, and maybe in the moment you just got excited, and sometimes you catch yourself like subconsciously stepping closer to something if you find it interesting, and then just didn't think it through and was like, oh yeah, this is this super dramatic guy that gets timed when he's doing surgeries.
I can't believe we had a...
Yeah, he apparently fainted, and then later found out, like, after, you know, checking on him, that he had died.
R.I.P., dude. R.I.P. No, but it's not really the surgeon's fault. It's not his fault. They shouldn't be in his way. So, anyways.
But Liston wrote and published 9 different books during his lifetime. They're all definitely outdated now, but they were still, like, they were prolific for the time. Like, he had one book that was just about, like, healing joints that were damaged, which is a big deal.
I mean, I'm sure it helped for future.
I would like to know,
since it's certain perspective on things.
Yeah. I would like to see those books. That would have been cool.
I wonder if anyone based like their research off of his and then learned even more.
I would assume so. I would assume someone, you know, because it has to. If he invented some of these things,
that's very
someone
true.
had to learn it and piggyback. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true.
But he ended up dying of an aneurysm on December 7th of 1847 at his home. So he was 53 years old when he died, which is about this. Young. Yeah, that's it's a
but
I
mean in that time frame,
pretty.
Mm-hmm.
He was,
It was about average, I think, for the time. I think it might have been a little later 50s than most people died, but still,
I feel like the 60s is usually when people lived around that time.
So he was a little younger, but it's some people find it ironic that he died of an aneurysm whenever that was one of the things that he kind of helped treat was aneurysms. Because I think he wrote a book about treating aneurysms too.
Oh, that's okay. That is a little funny.
That's ironic.
But I mean, you can't operate on yourself, so.
No, that's true.
That song, you know that song. Isn't it ironic? Like, just
don't you think?
That just popped in my head.
No, I love it. So I was curious when they discovered like bacteria and stuff like that, since it kept when I was researching, it kept mentioning like, hey, he did this, but it wasn't out of stupidity. That's just like the culture at the time, because historians don't want to bash on him because it's not like he was doing it out of ignorance. That's just at the time they legit did not realize that bacteria and like cross-contamination of blood was an issue.
Right.
Like doctors were described, the best surgeons were described as wearing like blood-soaked and like blood-dried coats because that meant that they had performed a lot of surgeries.
Yeah, they're basically more like
more advanced
butchers back then than actual doctors of today.
It was later though, like it was just a little bit past Liston that they actually confirmed that diseases were caused by tiny bacteria.
Oh.
And it was discovered by a French chemist named Louis Pasteur, which sounds like pasteurization, because he proved that the fermentation of wine and then the souring of milk was caused by microorganisms, which then led to milk pasteurization, and thus started leading to new medical practices in which they weren't allowed to cross-contaminate blood. They had to try to clean instruments, stuff like that. But it was just a little past Liston's time that these discoveries started being made.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
still
thought
with
that was
him
cool.
not knowing about bacteria and having a 1 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
Only like that's pretty impressive, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is the tale of Robert Liston. I thought he was a pretty cool dude, so I was like, I want to talk about him because when I read the Gentleman Time Me thing, I just thought that was so funny.
Gentleman Time Me. I love it.
I swear, it's like you can make an anime about like a ancient surgeon or something, because that sounds so dramatic.
That sounds like something for like Fate's Stay or whatever the Fate series is. I don't know. I know we're talking about anime.
They lost me. I was thinking, cartoon, but same thing. Different.
Yeah. It really is. It's
different
animation.
Design techniques, but same thing.
Yeah, fairly.
I mean, Netflix shows have basically become like live action animes at this point because they get so dramatic about things. So.
Don't even get me started.
The drama.
They made this is off topic, but they made a show. What is it called? School Spirits. Yeah, School Spirits, and it's on Paramount Plus.
Oh, okay.
And I started watching it because I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting, and it's basically like about a girl who is missing, but there's a spiritual realm that she's stuck in at her school, and these other spirits who passed away at that same school are there to help her kind of like find her way, to help her like move on, if that makes sense.
But they aren't moved on?
That's what I said. And that's why it's so confusing. And also, like, I wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt because, what's her name? She's in Karate Kid. She plays Tori.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I like her. She's good. I don't
Peyton
know her name.
List, I think is her name. And then the guy from that Zombies, the zombies from Disney. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's in it. The one that plays the zombie. He's in it. And so I was like, this is going to be great because the cast is kind of, kind of good. So slow.
I hate when that happens. You're so hyped for something and then...
to the freaking point. Like, the dialogue is just dragging. And so I had to go back to Wizards of Waverly Place.
That's okay. I understand.
I can't do this anymore.
I understand.
Gonna have to make that a little short.
Yes.
Wizardly Place, Sydney's favorite show at the time.
Only at the time. Next month it's gonna be like, I don't even know.
Oh no.
I was gonna say Sweet Life of Zach and Cody, but it's kind of boring watching it as an adult now.
Honestly, that would make a really good
Hannah Montana.
Oh my gosh.
That stuff is hilarious. Man, there's so many innuendo like jokes in there. And
okay, good
Billy
to know.
Ray,
yeah.
What a guy.
I'm gonna have to rewatch it, I guess.
The guy, what's his Jackson? The guy
plays her brother.
Which is funny because he was like in his 30s playing like a teenager.
Isn't that how it goes?
Yes.
It's kind of creepy.
But no, they should make a historical fiction, like the thing that my mom watches all the time with this guy. I bet they could do it.
Yeah, that would be good.
That would be really good.
Because he's interesting, and like they dramatize everything now. Like it wouldn't be hard to dramatize him a little bit, and they can even put like their dumb disclaimers of, hey, not everything's 100% accurate, because they do that all the time with
you just say like, loosely based or whatever.
I feel like when you brought up Edward Scissorhands or whatever, I feel like that would be kind of like what's it called? Like the lighting and the dramatics of kind of like that movie.
Mm-hmm.
For him, I feel like that would be
I could see it. Did he ever get married? Do you know?
I think he did.
Okay.
Like, I think he got married, but it never mentioned if he had any children or not. But I think he did get married.
What did you just say?
I said I'd marry him. Sounds like a pretty cool guy. He has anger issues. Me too. He likes to chop off body parts. Not me, but would love to see that happen in a surgical sense. Not. Don't come at me.
Oh my god.
Do not come for me.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Did he have any kids? Do you know that? It doesn't say anything about family related.
No, it basically mentioned in like one article that he had a wife, and then it just kind of went, and then he moved over here and did this and this and this. And I'm like, okay. So basically no one either knew or cared much to document anything about his wife.
Or he was just very private about his personal life.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. He was probably private about his personal life.
He sounds like a dude that's just like, I am a surgeon.
It's like,
what's your wife's name? I am a surgeon.
It's like, you don't need to know that. Why do you need to know that? Get out of here. Mm-hmm. I'm here. I'm teaching about medical things.
Right.
Not about my life. Get out.
Get out of here.
Jeez. Well, I mean, cool. that was the story. I love him. I need a shirt. I need to ask Mom for a shirt that just says like "Gentlemen, time me," and I'm gonna wear it one
Nobody
day on
will
the podcast.
ever understand what that shirt means.
Precisely,
okay.
unless they have watched this podcast
Yes.
episode, which
You
kudos
should
to
have
you.
the podcast on the back of the T-shirt.
That would be cool.
We need to fix our logo right now. He's just a little.
Yeah, it's just a little alien.
Just a
dude.
little alien dude. He needs a
looks like
makeover.
an-
He's gonna get a makeover.
This isn't
soon.
me like
Yes.
bashing y'all's logo because I think he's adorable, but he looks like he has little claw hands.
He does.
Yeah.
He's a little crabby.
I made it in Illustrator, so I'm still figuring out how to do stuff. And I was just like, well, we need a logo in the background, so that's our temp
You should put a
logo.
bow tie on him.
Oh my gosh, he'd be a dapper young gentleman.
Yes, he can
Oh
be
my
all
goodness.
dapper.
Well, that was Days, and maybe next time, if you see me with that shirt, you'll know where it's from.
Yes.
And that would be really, really cool. If you liked us, please subscribe. Please like the video if you want to. I don't really mind either way. Comment down below. We
All
love
good
to read
things,
it.
all good things.
All good things.
Yes,
tell us
all
jokes.
things.
Tell us facts. Tell us things you want us to look up. We love it all. And we hope to see you guys next time. Thank you, Sydney, for being here.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.